So, I said last week that with everything we've received so far in Season 2, it was shaping up to be a vastly more superior piece of content than what we were offered in Season 1, with densely packed episodes full of excitement and compelling concepts that hit those sweet spots of interest, like finding a random bar of chocolate in the back of your cupboard, or getting that itch at the right time on the back of your head.
Good times!
Then, I remembered that for all the genius that this season contains, like with any good show, we have the occasional dip in engagement when it comes to the episodic plot threads, and sometimes the additional characters with the level of spontaneity they give off. And this week's installment is guilty of just that. It possesses some of the most bizarre injections to the show so far, which is befitting for a series like this, but in the context of what we've received prior to it, it feels like it loses that intensity that carried these last few episodes. And at times, a little levity isn't a bad thing, but when it felt like last week's episode was the crescendo to something better, this did feel like it pulled the rug out from under me. Now, in terms of a breakdown, there isn't really much to discuss at the back of this, so I might as well dig into as much as I can, but I feel you should know this will be a shorter review.
Cool.
We open on Ben going into an anime-style imagination dreamscape where he's a superhero that gets dragged back into reality very quickly with a familiar character in 6-6 returning, accompanied by a new addition to the show, Volcanus. Who have travelled to Earth in search of a raw mineral to create a doomsday device when Ben intercepts them and gets a little assist from a group of galactic heroes known as the Galactic Enforcers.
What fun! What fun!
They dispense with both and Ben gets acquainted with these new personalities. The leader of the group, Ultimos, a rather Superman-esque character, introduces the rest of the crew with Tiny, a female Tetraman who takes a liking to forearms, and Synaptak, a giant brain in a ball who has an unrequited love for Tiny.
Why are you the way that you are?
The Enforcers tell Ben that they've been tracking Volcanus and 6-6 for a while now and could use his assistance in these matters as he knows Earth better than they do, and essentially he is Earth's mightiest hero.
I understood that reference.
Ben agrees, but before they begin, he offers Ultimos a piece of chocolate by way of greeting, only to discover later that it's his literal kryptonite, and Synaptak sees this as an assault on Ultimos, creating tension between the group. When Synaptak and Tiny try to engage Volcanus and 6-6, they're handled with relative ease and Ben is left to combat them alone until Max and Gwen can offer support. Ben attempts to stop them as Accelerate but fails, and it's later revealed that Ultimos has recovered, and he manages to get the group together and they engage Volcanus and 6-6 one more time with the aid of Cannonball and successfully complete their mission.
Good job.
We end on the Enforcers making Ben an honorary member of the group and depart Earth with Volcanus and 6-6 in tow and Synaptak confessing his love for Tiny.
Love is blind.
So, as you can tell, there's a fair sprinkle of imagination thrown into this episode, and I can respect that. But the idea of galactic superheroes feels almost redundant when you know what Ben will go on to become, and how both Gwen and Max will support that and the other factions that are involved later in the series. And I feel the writers understand that when every time we see the Enforcers after this episode, they are treated like literal afterthoughts with practically no development. And I guess it's because of that I feel rather ambivalent towards them. The small character moments we do get feel especially simple for younger audiences, like Tiny being, simple, and Ultimos' not so subtle shout out to Superman's weakness, but I will say to give Synaptak the hero complex and feel that deep level of insecurity to try and compete with a 10-year-old boy was rather comical and I guess gives the older audience members something to watch. This group sadly aren't anything special to the show given everything else that we get, but I will commend the casting. Something I never realised before was that the entire crew of the Galactic Enforcers were all voiced by Galactic Enforcers from the Star Wars universe.
Ooh, that's interesting.
With Synaptak portrayed by Greg Ellis, who voices Turk Falso in Clone Wars, and Baron Valen Ruder in Rebels. Tiny is the voice of Vanessa Marshall, who plays Star Wars Rebels' as lead protagonist Hera Syndulla, and Ultimos is the work of legendary actor Tom Kane, who was the narrator for every installment of Clone Wars and voiced Admiral Yularen and Master Yoda throughout the series too. So the cast alone was incredibly strong for this ragtag group of wannabes, but the very idea of them just came off rather hokey and misplaced, especially for a universe like Ben 10 when you already have heroes everywhere. It doesn't possess the intended effect for me, and I'm curious if it did it for anyone else. As for the villains of this one, 6-6 we saw previously in the episode Hunted back in season 1 when we met Tetrax, but in terms of his motivations and character, he's just a simple bounty hunter and that's about it. With Volcanus, who makes his debut here though, he's simply a greedy entrepreneur with an aggressive side. We see him pop up throughout the franchise a handful of times, but each occasion is pretty uneventful. I will say there's a couple of moments in this that set up future moves that Ben will apply to his own moveset for some of his heroes. Firstly with Forearms, who learns the Hulk clap from Teeny in this, and when he's about to hit the molten pot of minerals, he's concerned about the temperature and what it could do to Cannonball. However, we see in season 3, when fighting the Yenodushi, he gets trapped in a mountain as Cannonball and among volcanic magma, and manages to survive. And the last thing I do appreciate is giving Ben an alias for his human form like Gwen has with Lucky Girl. Other than that, I wish I could be more positive about this installment, but compared to what we are yet to get in this season and the series as a whole, it's a rather forgettable installment and is intended to be a good time, but with the lack of consequences and trivial inclusions, seriously does devalue this episode. Anyway, that's all I've got for this one. Please do leave a like and subscribe for more down the road, and until then everyone, take care, and I'll catch you later.